Welcome back to Live Impact News, just past 3:30 on the clock here. And as I mentioned, our biggest story really of the last week is Border Patrol being in Charlotte, making hundreds of arrests, and the confusion surrounding whether or not they are leaving anytime soon. Some miscommunication and misinformation going back and forth between the federal government and our local sheriff's office here. So we're still working to hammer out those details. I know that there's a lot of confusion overall, but Department of Homeland Security says they are staying here. Operation Charlotte's Web, they're calling it, will continue. But whether or not that continues, we're still dealing with the residual effects here of people who have been arrested and detained, multiple arrests that have happened publicly. This is going viral all over media and causing a lot of fear. One particular incident, though, that we have been looking into here at WCNC, a Charlotte landscaper has been detained since Monday. From what we found, no criminal record. He has the authorization to work here, and so that's why our Nate Morabito has been looking into this. So, Nate, I know that you've been talking to sources, but still a lot of questions still unanswered here, it seems.
Yeah, I mean, I think I want to show you guys the video first.
Okay.
This is video that I became aware about earlier this week and communicated with the man who shot the video, was a co-worker of a guy named Oscar Rene Rodriguez. That is the man who is currently in custody. He was previously in Florida. Now he's in Georgia at a detention center, his family tells me. And he was working at a landscaping job on Kenilworth Avenue, right there in the heart of Charlotte, when he was approached by federal agents. And here's how it went down.
We could take you in, temporarily detain you. Do you have your papers and make it that simple?
I have.
Okay,
I have my license. You need it?
Just your license?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have your resident card or anything?
I got just this.
Employment authorization.
I got the permit. Yeah.
And you're from El Salvador, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna need to run this card, okay?
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna need you to come with just to the white car, and we're gonna run it, and then we'll go from there, okay? In the meantime, I'm gonna put cuffs on behind your back. Just
He's going to be detained.
temporarily detained, okay? And then we'll let you go if it comes back good.
Why? What's wrong?
Because we conducted an investigation.
Yes. So put your hands behind your back. Thank you. Behind your back.
You don't have to do this, man.
Behind your back.
There you go.
Okay, so that's what went down about 10:30 or so Monday morning, and you heard the agent say we conducted an investigation. Over the last few days, there's been a lot of pushback from the Department of Homeland Security, ICE, Border Patrol, saying we were not out profiling people. We are doing targeted enforcement. We're looking for violent criminals, but if we find people here illegally, it's our oath to enforce the law. In this case, they said we conducted an investigation. What does that mean? We don't know. And we reached out starting late Wednesday to 2 members of Congress, to ICE, to Border Patrol, to try to get some understanding about why this man was detained. In the meantime, I'll kind of walk you through my process. Whenever I'm working on a story, I'm doing everything I can to disprove the conclusion I've come to, what the facts tell us, right? What the facts tell me right now that we know of is that this man does not have a violent criminal history. But I don't know if he has any active warrants, though. That's not something that I can tell you, right? We can't definitively say that. I can tell you by looking into immigration court records that there's a deportation order for him in 2006, so about 19 years ago. In Texas, an immigration judge ordered him to be deported. Well, fast forward to 2025. In March of this year, the Department of Homeland Security authorized him to work here.
Okay.
That doesn't mean he's a legal citizen. That just means he is now allowed to work. So he's hired by a landscaping company. We interviewed the employer who told me we ran his information through the system and the government verified that he could work here. But what's interesting, and this is part of the great thing about the job that we have, is that we get to learn new things every day. Because this is incredibly complicated, right?
Of course.
On his employment authorization card that the government gave him, there's a certain category that's listed next to his name. And it basically means deferred action. A word, I've never heard that before until this week. That means that at the time, according to an immigration attorney I spoke to, when they approved his authorization to work here, DHS said, not a priority for us to try and pursue deportation right now, for whatever reason. But if he doesn't have any violent criminal history that we know of, if he doesn't have any active warrants or new immigration charges, which again, we've not been told anything, and I found only what I can find in the court systems, there is the potential that that deportation order can result in now his deportation, even though it was almost 20 years ago, even though the government said, hey, you can work here just earlier this year. We also did criminal search on him here in North Carolina. The only thing I can find is a failure to wear a seatbelt last year. So you have this man's family and employer who are really supporting him. I thought in that video what was interesting is that he was detained very quickly. He was put in handcuffs very quickly. It was like, once we prove you're not him, we will release you. But until then, we're going to keep you in cuffs, right? But overall, it seemed like not very high intensity, as some encounters have been over the last week.
It was incredibly calm how that all went down.
And, you know, I mean, credit to everyone in that situation, because this guy went to work that day at a landscaping job, Border Patrol doing, or ICE, whoever it was, doing their jobs. They come across them. Whoever was filming was not trying to amp up the situation. And I'm not saying that's good or bad. All I'm saying is that it was very calm, to your point. And in the meantime, the family's really having trouble figuring out what's going on. They don't understand. He's got 5 kids. You know, his wife works too. She's a permanent U.S. resident. His son enlisted in the Marines. Stepson enlisted in the Marines, so he served his country, his son. So in the meantime, I reached out to Congresswoman Adams' office. They live in her district in East Charlotte. And she yesterday called the stepson and started talking to him. And I know that they're trying to work on whatever they can in this situation. I also reached out to Congressman Mark Harris's office, because he also represents pretty close to that area. You know, Congresswoman Adams is Democrat. Congressman Harris is a Republican. I've not heard back from Congressman Harris's office at all about this, because I think a real important question was, why is the country choosing to deport this man? If the goal was to get violent offenders, how do they come across him? And then say, yeah, he's got to go. So I think a lot of this is going to have to be sorted out in court. But here's the most interesting thing. Because he had that deferred action category on his employment authorization, this immigration attorney from North Carolina told me, at any point the government can change its mind and say, you know what, you're a priority now to us. We want to deport you. And there's very little recourse. I mean, either someone has to violate a person's rights, I'm told, or there has to be a procedural issue, or maybe someone seeking asylum to try to make it so they don't ultimately get deported. So we were here at the station Wednesday, late in Wednesday afternoon, interviewing his wife, who was just overly emotional.
Of course.
You know, we don't know everything about the situation. That's what's really tricky about these cases. Heck, we don't even know most names yet. You know, they haven't said they've had this guy in custody even. There's something like 370 people they've taken into custody since Saturday. Very few names. If you remember, Monday they said, essentially they said, most of the people they've taken into custody are not violent criminals. 44 out of the 100 plus, I can't remember if it was 150 or something like that, were violent, they say, or had some kind of notable criminal history. That number has grown to 370. We don't have names. We don't know why the underlying reasons they took them into custody are. And so it's a mystery. And what all we can do is at some point say, we've done the reporting. Here's what we know. Here's what we don't know. But we think the public needs to know about the situation. Because if he doesn't have a violent offense, this runs counter to the government's statement that they're going out after people who are terrorizing communities. Unless they can tell me something differently, which they've not done yet.
I think that's kind of the biggest conflict that journalists and the government have had during this kind of Border Patrol operation, is just kind of the slow trickle of information. It's taking a while to get some of this information out there. You're right, it may be that this is what they intended to do. There may be stuff that we don't know that makes this in line with what they said they intended to do. But at this point, we just have to kind of wait for them to give us that information.
And here's something that's been really challenging too. Every person that's kind of wrapped up in this is given what's called an A number. It's a unique identifier. And you can go on a government website and you should be able to locate these people based on where they are, based on their A number and their country of origin. Since I found out about this, I've been refreshing it. doesn't come up. I mean, it's been well more than 72 hours now at this point, right? 4 days?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So it's been more than 72 hours. It's not even registering in the system yet. And so that's been a big issue, an immigration attorney told me too. People are having trouble figuring out where their loved ones even are.
Has his wife been able to communicate with him?
There's been very limited communication. An initial phone call, I'm told very briefly, and they told me that the government was trying to force him to do a voluntary deportation, just to sign off and say, yeah, I'll leave, which he was resistant to.
Sure.
And, you know, I think it's interesting too, because we haven't heard, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know that we've heard a case where people have come forward like this in Charlotte yet, where family members have been willing to say, I have the documents.
Mm-hmm.
I am very sad about this. He was a good man. You know, he complied. He went about getting the work authorization the right way, an employer standing up for him. This is really the first one that I'm aware of, at least, where we finally can put, you know, a face and a story to a person's situation. You know, it's a little bit difficult because it's hard to find out the truth. But I just want to look at this right now because I just got something in from U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. And so let me just take a look. I mean, just came in, okay? All right. Here we go. A spokesperson told me this. An employment authorization document, the card that he has, does not translate to lawful immigration status, nor does it protect an alien from immigration enforcement actions. Under the Trump administration, all criminal aliens remain subject to enforcement. Okay. That's a very common thing that we've heard a lot of.
Yeah.
Right? So just because you were authorized to work doesn't mean you get to stay here, number one. And I'm going to read the rest of it real quick if you want.
Sure, of course.
If you want to give me the second here. Yeah. I mean, so that's the information that we have right now, which aligns with everything else we've found so far. The word criminal they have used to say anyone who is here illegally
Is inherently a criminal.
Yes. Violent criminal, though, is different, and I think we can
course.
all agree on that.
Yeah.
And so that word violent is not in this statement from U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. So that's some new information just into me. We just published our story about 15 minutes ago, actually. It's on WCNC.com right now. And that's something else I want to point out. You know, I gave ICE and Border Patrol a deadline of 10 o'clock this morning, didn't hear back, and I followed back up with them. Hey, I haven't heard from you all.
Yeah.
I can give you till 11, you know, just to show how careful we are trying to be and how fair we are trying to be, and because ultimately we want to be right. We want to report the truth here. And we continued the conversation. One of them said you should really talk to U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, a different arm of the Department of Homeland Security. I asked them as soon as possible, can you give me some information? And now that's just as in. Again, does not change at all what we are reporting.
It doesn't add a whole lot that we haven't already heard. You're right.
Right. It actually aligns with the story that we have produced.
And I think I'm glad you pointed out to just kind of your process in all of this. That is something about the way that you handle, I mean, investigative journalism is tedious and difficult at times. You are not a gotcha journalist. You are very clear with people about this is when this is probably going to air.
Yeah.
This is my deadline for hearing something. This is what I need to know, what I'm trying to confirm. Interesting, though, that, you know, it's still taking so long to get a hold of some of that information.
Well, and I've told the spokespeople for these agencies, I told the family, I said, I'm not the kind of reporter that's going to take this story and put it on TV right away.
Yeah.
Just for a headline. That is not what we are trying to do here.
Yeah.
We are trying to put the pieces together of this massive puzzle that has consumed our city over the last week and verify everything. You know, I found another person with the same name in Kentucky with a similar name, same age, same home country, and I'm reaching out to the public defender's office there. I'm looking at the court records, and I see his A number is different than Oscar here's A number. So that, again, I'm trying to disprove my conclusion, what the facts tell me, because I don't want to be in a situation where we're negligent because we're rushing something out there.
Yeah.
You know, it's so critical in these situations to really kind of turn over every stone, and it will consume you, but we owe it to the public. You know, especially as politically charged as this is, I have no interest in entering that.
No.
Right? That has been happening for the last week here on all sides. And this is strictly the truth. Right?
I think interesting too, like you mentioned, as journalists, we get to learn new things every day. I mean, I'm not an immigration expert, that's for sure. We get to talk to those people and learn from immigration lawyers and experts and things like that. But a piece of this story for me that's interesting is I didn't even know you could have a work authorization, and that doesn't necessarily mean that you're allowed to be here legally. You know what I mean? It's
That was my first conclusion.
Weird
Well,
dance.
Easy. Yeah, he's got a work
Right.
authorization. Surely he can be here legally. Not true. And if we had reported that the first day, we would have been wrong.
Yeah.
And to your point, like, that's why I reached out to an immigration attorney yesterday, because we are not experts. We are becoming experts on this stuff. And it's so complicated. It's so simple to say these are all illegal immigrants, or these are all people here illegally, or these are violent criminals. But you need all of that context. And it takes time to look into it. It takes time to explain it. This is the perfect place to do it, actually, because we have the time, but there's no constraints on us to keep talking about this.
Yeah.
So that people can really understand. It's very nuanced, and ultimately there's people's lives on both sides here,
Of
right?
course.
The people who live here that support a lot of what's happening, the people who live here who are against what's happening, the people that are caught up in the operation, the agents that are out there enforcing it. So you just have a lot kind of going on, and you just want to be fair across the board.
I know you're going to have a short version at 5:30 and then the full story at 11. Anything else people need to know?
No, I mean, I'm sure I'm forgetting something, but I urge you to go to WCNC.com and take a look at what we've reported so far. And, we want to hear stories about what actually has happened. So if you know of cases where you think it's egregious, or people were not violent, or someone was profiled, let us know. If you know of someone who was incredibly violent that they've taken into custody, let us know. We want to be aware of this.
Yeah.
No matter what side you're on here, we want to understand everyone who was taken into custody and why.
Yeah, a lot of this is us relying on experiences that we hear from our viewers too. So
Yep.
anything helps. All right, Nate, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right.